Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are located. I am Gabriela Castro from Trade in Motion, and we are very happy to have this podcast, People First, the Heart of Business. This is our third episode, and we have two great lawyers as our guests. Mary Chuba and Dobrina Ustun. I will give you a short bio about their experience. Dobrina Ustun is the founder and managing partner of Ustun Law Group. She is an immigrant who has personally experienced the impact of U.S. immigration law on businesses, communities, and individuals. Her first-hand understanding of the challenges and complexities involved allows her to approach each case with empathy and insight. So thank you, Dobrina, for being part of our podcast. And Mary Chuba is a seasoned business immigration attorney at Sáenz Garcia Law Firm with over a decade of experience in employment-based visas, compliance, and client advocacy. She has led high-volume casework, including H-1Bs and L-1S, EB-1AS, and national interest waivers, combining technical expertise with a human-centered approach. Thank you very much for being part of this podcast. As you know, this podcast is about people because we think in Trade in Motion that people is the most important asset in the world. And as Trade in Motion helps companies to find the right talent for their operations in the US and Canada, bringing them from Mexico, we have two specialized lawyers working with TN visas and H-2B visas who will be sharing their experience. Please, Dobrina, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. You did pretty good job of, my introduction, so I will be short. I've been practicing immigration law for now almost 15 years, and my main focus is on business immigration and helping companies bring the right people to the United States. I have experience with the different types of, work visas from TNs to L1s to H1B to O1 and pretty much anything and everything that a U.S. employer may need when it comes to immigration. So in short, that's about it.
Thank you very much, Dobrina. Mary, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, you did a really great job with the introduction. Just a minor update or edit. It's my pleasure to be here with you today, Gabriela, with my esteemed colleague, Dobrina. I have over a decade of experience in the legal field, locally in the US and overseas. Primarily over almost 5 years, I have focused on immigration, all aspects of it. Specifically in the last few years, I have focused on business immigration. I am super excited to offer any type of insights that we can give. I love the idea of immigration and how it bridges gaps and how it unites people and how it helps economies grow. So I'm really grateful to be on this podcast with you today.
Thank you very much, Mary. My first question would be for Dobrina. Dobrina, you personally experienced the impact of U.S. immigration because you are an immigrant, as I am. And we all know that the immigration documentation, all the process sometimes could be a little bit tricky, or we don't know how to do things. So Dobrina, can you first tell us your experience as an immigrant with all the visa process and how you companies can do the best to avoid problems regarding immigration, bringing workers from other countries to the US?
Yeah, sure. So I immigrated to the United States a very long time ago, 20 plus years ago. So things have changed a lot. But one thing that kind of remains constant, and I mean pretty much the same, and especially for employers, is you have to be informed as what's going on, the trends, the change, any new changes in the law. And the other thing to remember is that immigration is the second most complex law after tax. So my advice is always to reach out to attorneys, to professionals who can guide you through these processes. And you don't want to waste time and money and resources trying to figure things out on yourself. It might look easy. Some people say, well, it's just a form. Unfortunately, it's not just a form. And even if it is, then you have to know where to send it. If you don't send it to the right place, it's gonna get rejected. And then here you lost about a month, of your, work, resources, and so forth. So my personal experience and, my experience as an immigration attorney has taught me that you always have to reach out to the professionals, to the people who do this on daily basis. I'm sorry, and so that you don't lose precious time and resources, and you do it right the first time.
Yeah, Dobrina, thank you. Because I've seen some companies that want to bring workers from other countries, in many cases, Mexico, and they say that their attorneys at the office will be doing the job. And I ask, are your attorneys immigration attorneys? No, they are corporate attorneys. Okay, so don't do that, because you need people who knows exactly how to do it. That's my experience. Maybe Mary, you want to add some about this comment between corporate lawyers and immigration lawyers?
Definitely second what Dobrina had mentioned. It's really, really important to hire someone with the expertise and knowledge of this process, because as you have companies, they have timelines, they have deadlines, they have deliverables, sorry. And so any mistake can delay the process, right? So it's definitely important for them to maybe farm it out. Some big companies, some big tech companies either have in-house immigration counsel, or they hire a law firm outside of their corporate attorneys to handle their immigration processes and cases. So I find that to be the smart way to go and the most efficient.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. And
welcome.
Dobrina, can you talk us about the TN visa? What are the pros, the cons? How easy, how difficult, how things go when you use the TN visa?
Yeah, sure. So the TN visa is applicable to it's under the former NAFTA agreement. So if you're a citizen of Mexico and citizen of Canada, you can potentially, your employer can potentially petition for the TN. Just at the very basic, TN requires an employment offer. It's not a self-sponsored visa, so you have to have a U.S. employer. As I said, you have to be either a national citizen of Canada or citizen of Mexico. Permanent residents are not eligible for this type of visa. The unique thing about the TN is that there's no cap like the H-1B, so it is open year round. The employers, they don't have specific deadlines until which they have to, petition that employee, or, like a registered employee for a lottery. There's no lottery. So that is, usually, pretty good deal for the employer, especially if they want to bring in somebody quickly. Now, the requirements for TN are obviously different than the H-1B in a sense that you have to be within the pre-approved professions, and these are listed on the Department of State's website. Usually, these are things like doctors, lawyers, engineers. Sometimes, we have, computer engineers. It just gets a little murky there. And for all of these professions, the common denominator is for most of them that you do need a bachelor degree that is related to that profession. And you cannot substitute bachelor and experience. Sometimes, people maybe have 2-year, some kind of an associate degree and 5 years of experience. And under if you're doing H-1B, perhaps you can combine your degree with the experience to make it like equivalent to bachelor degree. With the TN, you have to have a actual bachelor degree for most of the professions. Now, there are 3 professions or categories that do not necessarily require a bachelor degree. You have to have experience for all of these 3, and I'll just run you quickly through these 3 so that people are informed. Now, one thing to remember before I go over those, since they don't require bachelor degree, they're in a very high demand. When we have things that are in high demand, we have higher scrutiny from both immigration services in the United States and obviously the U.S. consulate either in Mexico and Canada. So you kind of have to be careful with how you present your evidence, your packet, when you go for your interview or when you file here with immigration services. So the 3 professions that do not require bachelor degree, these are management consultants. The requirement here is that you have to have at least 5 years of experience that is related to the profession. And you come into the U.S. on more of a temporary basis. It's not necessary. You're not here to replace a worker. You're not here to sort of, get a full-time position. You're here to bring in your skills, a skill that the employer currently is lacking, and then they need you to come in and sort of advise them. So these are usually the best way to think about it is, when you come in for a few months, maybe 6 months, maybe 5 months, maybe 8 months, and then you go back and then the employer brings you back. So you're, again, it's not a full-time, position that it's for 3 years and then you extend that 3 years. So that's under the management, the management consultants. The denial rate on this, unfortunately, is higher compared to the other TN types, just because, as I said, it doesn't require bachelor degree. So a lot of people are trying to to basically come as management consultants. The other one that doesn't require it is recommended to have a bachelor degree, but does not require is computer system analyst. So this usually requires about 3 years of experience. You have to be able to prove that, and you have to obviously come into the U.S. to work as a computer system analyst. And last but not least, we have the scientific technician. Where you don't require, there's no requirement for bachelor degree, but you have to have the skills, you have to have the experience, and you must support a degree professional under that category. So these are the 3 that do not require bachelor degree, but do require more extensive documentation in terms of your experience, in terms of your other credentials, certificates that you may have, licenses, and so forth. Everything else, going from, as I said, doctors, lawyers, accountants, and pretty much any other profession, that will require an actual bachelor degree from a 4-year college. In terms of, I spoke about there's no lottery, there's no limit on the TN. It does work really well for, for U.S. companies who do need professional workers, and they do need them rather quickly. So they can, they can recruit in Mexico, or they can recruit in Canada and bring that talent to the United States. So that's kind of the summary of the TN. Now, one more thing is that it's a non-immigrant visa, so you should not have the intent to immigrate to the United States, meaning it is a single intent. So when you come in, and usually when people come in, they will start the next question would be, can I apply for permanent residence? Can I file for a green card? It is a little bit, more complicated. Not that it's impossible, it is. You just have to be mindful of the dates and how you're going to present that case. But generally speaking, it is a non-immigrant visa. And also the spouse, the dependent, is not allowed to work in the United States. So I think that sums it up in terms of the TN.
But their children can go to school.
The children can go to school. That is correct. Yeah, everybody's here in the United States, legally under the TN dependent, but the spouse cannot work. The children can go to school. They're allowed to attend school. Whether that's going to be a public school or private school, that's a whole different discussion, but they are allowed to go to school.
And what would you consider a proof of experience for the ones that don't need the candidates who don't need a bachelor degree?
Yeah, so in terms of proof of experience, generally we do request employment verification letters from previous employers. So if you're claiming that, you have, 3 years of experience as a, management consultant, you manage like 5 projects for X, Y, and Z company, then we would want, employment verification from that company, basically telling us that, you worked for them from January 1st through December 31st, 2024, whatever it is, and some of the duties that you perform, so that we can show that you actually have the required experience, and that is relevant to your new role in the United States. If you have multiple employers, you want to bring in multiple, experiences, then obviously each employer will have to provide this type of employment verification letter.
Okay. Okay, Dobrina, thank you very much for explaining what a TN visa is. And as you said, it's not a lottery, which helps a lot.
Right, yeah. Yeah, in terms of planning, in terms of more, urgent projects, and that you need really like skilled workers, this works really well for employers in the United States.
Yeah, thank you, Dobrina. Now I would like Mary to explain us the H-2B visa, which is a non-immigrant visa also, that allows U.S. employers to temporarily hire foreign workers for non-agriculture jobs when qualified U.S. workers are not available. Can you explain us, Mary, more about the H-2B visa, please?
Sure, absolutely. So unlike the TN visa, this is a CAP visa. So timing is everything. As you mentioned so correctly, this is a temporary base visa. So the employer must show that the need is temporary, meaning it's not a permanent job offer. There are certain timeframes that they need to fall within. They need to prove things such as, is it seasonal? Is it peak load? Is it intermittent? Is it a one-time need, right? Like, so maybe there's a construction push and they need workers just to make it to the deliverables, one-time need, project's done, they have to leave. Typically, this visa type is favorable. Why? Because the employer gets to control what the job qualifications would be, right? So, for example, if they want to hire for the hospitality industry, for resorts, for labor, construction, landscaping, then they need to put in what is the minimum requirements. Sometimes employers might want them to have 3 years. Sometimes they want them to have 3 months, 6 months, or at minimum, some type of certificate, depending on what area they fall within. So going back to what we initially said, it is a cap and lottery system. So timing matters, right? There are two opportunities for the draw. So we have October to March and then April to September. Typically, once the cap is done, then obviously, if you're not drawn then you kind of have to wait for the next go around. So it's very, very important with the H-2B visa to start the process early, at least 5 to 6 months. It's very important to make sure that we're keeping record of different things because there are different steps involved. The DOL is involved. We have to get the labor certification approved before we can even file with USCIS. And then, of course, we have to wait for USCIS to approve, and then the interview process with consular processing before they can come here. So it's really important for us to make sure that the timing is right and make sure that we're keeping detailed record of all the recruitment efforts, because it's not just showing USCIS that it is a temporary need. We also have to show that there are no available US workers willing and able to do the job, which is why we have to seek help from other qualifying countries. There is, however, a process. Obviously, we can't expedite the first two steps, but with regards to filing with USCIS, we always have the option of filing with premium processing, which shortens the processing time to 15 business days. So give or take, we might be able to make up some time if we end up delaying with regards to starting slightly later in the process. But these are just really important things to note. One of the things that I like to emphasize really is not every country qualifies for the H-2B. So typically, it's really important. Mexico qualifies, right? For example, the Philippines qualifies for H-2B, but not the H-2A. So it's really, really important to make sure that we are following what the USCIS has designated eligible countries for the H-2B eligibility. In terms of what employers need to do, they basically do majority of the hard work, right? So basically, with regards to employers, they're the ones who start the process. They have to make sure that they have to prove all the temporary need. They have to show evidence that there's no qualified worker available. And then they have to make sure they're offering fair wages, right, and working conditions. And that's why we have the prevailing wage determination stage, which there is a misconception when a lot of US citizens or Americans say, oh, foreigners are taking our jobs. Not necessarily, oh, they're getting paid little to nothing. The DOL is there to prevent these type of things, right? And so we have to make sure that the employer also understands that they have to pay what is fair under DOL standards, right? And so after we're able to get that, and then we get the temporary labor certification, which then allows us to file for these, potential employees. Of course, there's also a burden of the potential employee, and that burden is to make sure that, number one, their nation is eligible, right? They have a valid job offer. They meet at least the minimum qualifications. So it could be skills, experience, or education. As I mentioned, the employer gets to define what the qualifications would be, right? Because they also have to designate a certain SOC code that they will have to fall within. And then they also have, since it's not also a dual intent visa, they have to show that they intend to return to their home country. And last but not least, which I think is the most important in determining qualifications for potential employees, they have to make sure they do not have any major immigration violation or criminal history. And if you do, then obviously you wouldn't qualify for this visa type. So typically, these are just the basic information available for the H-2B visa option.
Mary, how can an employer, how can they find that there are not workers available in the US? How can you prove that?
Oh, that's a really good question, right? They have a recruitment stage, right? So once we get the prevailing wage, we have to recruit. So basically advertising in platforms that are public. So sometimes they'll do a local newspaper. Sometimes, for example, if it's a construction job opportunity or trying to prove that there's shortage of construction workers. Let's say, for example, there is a union, right? So we'll have to post on that union's platform. It's basically advertising, right? So recruitment is advertising these job opportunities, and then and there's a certain amount of time we have to advertise. If there are no applications, we can proceed. If there are applications, we have to make sure we're following through to see whether or not they qualify. And typically, sometimes that ruins the opportunity if it's something where we're advertising for one position. Usually it's advised that we have multiple positions to fill, or multiple slots to fill within one type of job description, so that even if it's one person who applies, we can still proceed with recruiting foreign workers.
Okay. Thank you. So this question is for both of you. How many years are these employees, or these Mexicans or international workers, can stay working legally in the US? And I said legally because we want to do the right things.
Yeah, so for the TN is rather simple. So initially we will request a 3-year period, so they're good for 3 years, and then if that job opportunity continues, then we can ask for an extension for another 3 years. There's no limitation in terms of how many years that person can stay on the TN. Now, if it's one of, like, for example, if it's under the management consultant category, perhaps requesting initial 3 years might not be advisable, since you remember that this is more of a temporary job. But we can request 3 years. Sometimes strategically it's better to do 1 year or 2 years to show the immigration or the officer sitting at the US consulate that it is really temporary. The employer is not planning to replace anybody with that management consultant position. But generally speaking, legally speaking, it's 3 years.
Okay.
Increments of 3 years.
Thank you, Dobrina. Mary, for you, it's the same time for the H-2B visas?
Typically there's an initial, because remember, it is temporary. And so the idea is that they're not issuing a 3-year on the spot visa, because then that doesn't seem temporary at all. So typically the initial stays up to 1 year, and then they have extensions in increments of 1 year for a maximum of 3 years. So we can always overlap, so long as we strategically show that either the peak season continues to stay peak, or it's a peak season and then there is a 1 month overlap, and then the peak season starts up again, right? So there's strategic ways that we have to, on the initial filing, prepare the packets to show these dips, ebbs and flows, and to basically prove that it is not feasible or efficient to have these workers go back and then come back again within 4 weeks, right? But the maximum is 3 years, after which point, if they don't seek another visa option, they have to return to their home country for at least 3 months at minimum. And then we can try to do the process all over again for them to come back to the US.
Okay. I think that these 2 visas are very good if you want to have workers, non-agricultural workers, and professionals at the same time. So you can combine both, and that way US companies can that they need, that are in need at this moment, and they can combine both visas and have all the workers that they need to succeed and to continue producing and manufacturing the way they are doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's all about having options, right, for these employers.
Yeah, exactly. And as I said, the corporate attorneys from the companies can be together and hire or be in contact with attorneys that are working in immigration, and together they can help the company to have the workers that they need for now and for the future. Because I've been doing like a research, and I am drafting a big report on from now to the next 10 years. How does workforce looks in the US? And we will need international workers for sure, which is good for companies, and it's a good opportunity for the international workforce. I think that it's a win-win situation, and that way people can have a good job and companies can have the workers they need.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I also think it does bring a certain level of efficiency, just culturally, right? All across Europe, they have these type of immigration visa options for non-skilled, skilled workers, laborers. It definitely ensures longevity with projects and making sure primarily with the H-2B visa that deliverables are met, right? That's the most important. And obviously, it's more advantageous for employers or companies who have a well thought out plan, right? It makes them more of an appealable option when bidding for projects, right? I have the workforce, we can get it done shorter, in less amount of time, versus companies who don't, and obviously tend to fall short with the labor, and obviously are not as appealing when they pitch those bids to top government projects. So it's really important.
Yeah, and planning is very important, because if the next 5 years they will need all these workers, they need to plan now to have them ready in 5 years. Because as I tell my clients, you are looking for the same workforce that other companies are looking for. So there will be a moment that everybody will want the same people working, and it will not be available.
Yeah, very true.
Any other comments that you would like to share with you, some information before closing up or wrapping up our podcast?
I would just like to reiterate the importance of the H-2B and timing, right? Like we just mentioned, timing is everything. I'm pretty sure Dobrina will have some additional, more in-depth contributions with the TN visa. It's a little bit more sophisticated. However, timing is everything for every type of, a visa option, in terms of employment-based visa option that you intend to explore. Timing is everything. It doesn't just happen in one day. So making sure that you retain the right counsel, you fully disclose your end goals, the back ends of how your company functions, you have the documents to prove it. Be prepared to disclose everything, because only then will you be able to have how we say, a well thought out immigration strategy plan and options for your company to grow and be more prosperous.
Yeah, and one last thing, in terms of the employers and how to think about, having sponsoring, foreign nationals. Doesn't matter whether it's a TN, H-2B, whatever type of visa. You can definitely, as a company, as a corporation, you can use that as a recruitment tool, right? So that's how you can have, all the talent that you need to come to you and work for you. If you have well thought out immigration process and you provide these immigration benefits to these employees. And I have seen it, like, if that's one of the things that you do, definitely you're ahead of the game, if you compare yourself to your competitor. So use that for your for a recruitment tool.
Thank you very much, Dobrina. So Mary, Dobrina, thank you very much for being here. Please contact us for companies in need of workers or need of professionals. Contact us. I will be more than glad to provide coordinate from Mary, from Dobrina, and let's move on.
Fantastic. Thanks
Thank
for having
you.
us.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.